You think it was just an encounter, but your heart knows it was much more than that. What if this person who occupies your thoughts wasn't there by chance? You asked Allah for a sign, an answer, a direction. What you feel now, what you experience through this connection. What if it was His answer, disguised as a human presence? In this video, we'll explore what few dare to truly say out loud. What if Allah had already spoken to you, but you hadn't recognized His way of doing it? Stay until the end, because what you're about to understand today could change the way you read the signs that life sends you, and that your soul has been waiting for. 1. What if it wasn't a coincidence? Close your eyes for a moment. Remember that moment when you murmured a dua without really knowing what you were asking. That moment when you raised your hands, without precise words, but with a heavy heart, torn between the desire to be understood and the fear of being alone a little longer. And then life went on. You wiped away your tears, you caught your breath. You didn't receive a miracle, no prophetic dream, no message from heaven, but someone entered your life, softly, quietly, like a discreet echo of a prayer you had perhaps forgotten. But that heaven itself had not erased. And today, you feel something unsettling. It's not attachment. It's not mere interest. It's that strange, deep, almost sacred feeling that this person isn't here by mistake. You look at her, you talk to her, you listen to her, but what you feel can't be explained with simple words. It's as if your heart recognizes a sign without yet understanding its full significance. Do you remember that kind of inner silence when the soul begins to understand what the intellect cannot translate? That's when it happens. It's in these moments that Allah acts, not with a bang, but with precision, not with obviousness, but with synchronicities that only awakened hearts know how to decipher. You may not have realized to what extent this person arrived at the exact moment your soul was ready to receive. No sooner, no later. Because Allah never delivers a sign in a vacuum. He waits for the right moment, the one when you have no way out. Accept Him, and often, at that moment, He sends you someone, not to save you, but to be the mirror of what you didn't yet know you were seeking. And now that you're here, listening to these words, silently ask yourself this question. Why this person? Why now? This isn't just an encounter. It's not a distraction. This isn't a coincidence. Look carefully at the timeline. Go back to that precise moment when you asked for direction, clarity, support. Review the events. What fell away, what disappeared, and what appeared, subtly but powerfully. What you feel may not be attraction. It may be recognition. The heart always recognizes what the soul has already sensed. What if this person, this connection, this presence, was simply the human form of a heavenly response you had forgotten you had articulated? What if it wasn't a new story, but the silent continuation of a dialogue you had already begun with Allah in your most sincere moments? You think you're at the beginning of something, but perhaps you're already in the midst of a divine plan that began long before you were ready to understand it. 2. The story. You don't tell anyone. You've never really told this story, not because it's shameful, but because it's sacred. It's one of those moments when life stopped, just long enough for your heart to sink to its knees, while your body continued to breathe. It was a night, or perhaps a gray day. You were alone, but no one really knew. You were still laughing on social media. You pretended to function, but inside, you were empty, cracked, worn down by silences that no words could mend. And there, in that emptiness, you spoke. not to someone, not in a story. You spoke to the one who hears even the sad beats. You didn't try to word it well. You didn't raise your hands like you were taught. You just let your soul cry out without a voice. You didn't even say, "Help me." You just let flow what had been overflowing for too long. And the days passed. Maybe you didn't even notice. But someone arrived. Not like a hero, not like an obvious miracle. She just appeared. Like a drop of peace in your chaos. She didn't ask questions. She didn't force confidences. She just was there. Present. Available. Gentle. And what upset you wasn't what she said. It was what she understood without you having to explain it. There were looks where you felt seen. Shared silences where your soul stopped screaming. You found yourself smiling, breathing a little easier, asking yourself, how does she know? But deep down, it wasn't her who knew. It was Allah who knew. And perhaps it was through her that He decided to answer you. You haven't told anyone. Because you don't dare believe it. Because you're afraid it's just a mirage. Or because you tell yourself you don't deserve such a gentle answer. After so much confusion. But there's something inside you that remains frozen since that encounter. Something that tells you, this isn't just a presence. It's an appointment written elsewhere. And yet, you keep it all to yourself. You don't want to break this magic by making it rational. You prefer to remain silent, keeping this story in a secret place in your soul, where you deposit what no one would understand. But even in silence, you continue to ask yourself, is it He who sent me this piece in human form? What if the answer didn't come with proof, but only with an inner recognition that nothing can imitate? 3. The voice that doesn't lie. There's a voice inside you. Not the one that thinks, not the one that analyzes, not the one that says, be careful, don't imagine anything, stay rational. No, I'm talking about the one that feels, the one that doesn't make noise, but never lies, the one that can't explain, but can recognize. You heard it, the very moment this person entered your inner space. She wasn't speaking loudly, but she was vibrating. Something inside you suddenly calmed. It wasn't euphoria. Not the fire we often mistake for love. Not the emotional addiction that eventually burns out. No. It was peace. A silent peace. Heavy. Authentic. And you don't even know why. There's nothing spectacular. No magic words. But every time this person is there, even in silence, even from a distance, your heart calms. Your thoughts slow down. Your soul, however, becomes anchored. And that, you haven't felt it with anyone else. But here it is. Your mind screams. It says you're inventing, that you're projecting. It looks for proof. It questions. Why her? Why now? It feeds your fears, your wounds, your past. It wants something concrete, guarantees, rational. But your heart asks nothing. It doesn't scream. It knows. And what it feels is not up for discussion. It is recognizable. It's as if something deep inside you is whispering, you didn't find her. She was sent to you. Do you want to doubt? Doubt. But why does this feeling return every time you think of her? Why does this particular, almost sacred calm impose itself on her gaze, her presence, even her silence?
Do you really believe it comes from nowhere? That it's just a coincidence of the heart? No. It's not a simple feeling. Perhaps it's the subtle trace of a divine response, the invisible mark of someone who understood you even before you were able to formulate your request. Perhaps you've forgotten it, the dua you made one night when nothing made sense anymore. But heaven hasn't forgotten it. And what you feel today, perhaps it's not an emotion, perhaps it's a confirmation. But this time, it doesn't come through words. It comes through the peace that this person places in your heart, without even trying. What if this peace was the language of Allah that your soul understands, even when your mind still doubts? 4. Invisible signs. Close your eyes. Imagine yourself alone, on a road no one knows. No signs, no map, no voices around, only you, and this darkness that forces you to grope your way forward. Each step is a decision, each direction, a silent prayer. You walk, but you don't know if you're moving further away, or closer to what you've been searching for so long. And then, without warning, a light appears in the distance. It doesn't flood the path. It doesn't illuminate the future. It doesn't make the night disappear. But it's enough. Just enough for you to take a step. Just one. And that step saves you from the void. That light. Maybe it's a person, not an angel, not a spectacular miracle, but someone whose presence illuminates your soul, without you being able to explain it. She doesn't solve everything. She doesn't even know half of your story. But when she's there, something inside you stops being afraid. It's as if Allah has placed a lantern in your hands, not to illuminate everything, but to keep you going, to understand that you are not abandoned, that even in the night, you are seen, guided, loved. Allah's answers don't always fall from the sky in the form of miracles. They often take the form of imperfect but perfectly placed human beings. They enter your life at the exact moment your soul was about to break. And if you look closely, this person arrived just after a trial, just after a prayer, just after an invisible exhaustion that no one saw. She didn't shout that she was coming for you. She didn't promise to fix you. But she rekindled something. A peace, a courage, a hope. What if this was it? A sign. Not a noisy miracle, but a soft light that appears when you no longer have the strength to light your own lamp. You may think it's just a coincidence. But remember, Allah never lets a sincere heart walk in the dark without sending it a guide. And sometimes, that guide is someone who reaches out to you without knowing that day, they saved you. So take a good look around you. Who is this silent light that asks for nothing, but illuminates everything, simply by its presence? What if this light had never been a coincidence, but a divine encounter camouflaged in the simplicity of a human connection? 5. What if you asked the right questions? You ask the question so many others silently ask themselves. Is this person a test or an answer? What if instead of looking for the answer, you change the question? Ask yourself instead, how was my heart beating before she arrived? Was it tired of searching? Was it filled with emptiness, consumed by incomprehension, frozen in a solitude that no presence could truly fill? You didn't speak much anymore, but you thought constantly. You pretended to be fine, but every night, your soul cried out for something no words could express. And then, she arrived. And now, listen carefully. Not your head, your heart. It feels a little more grounded, doesn't it? A little less scattered. As if someone had placed an invisible hand on your inner turmoil. Not to erase it, but to remind it that it's no longer alone. You continue to doubt. But between the doubts, there is this peace you didn't have before. This clarity that sometimes lasts only a few seconds, but leaves a trace. What if it wasn't a trap? What if it wasn't an illusion? What if it was the answer to a supplication you forgot you made? An old wish, uttered during a night of exhaustion that you thought had vanished into thin air. But Allah, He doesn't forget what your soul has whispered, even when your mouth was closed. You look for signs in what others do, but sometimes the real signs are in what you feel, deep down, where the mind doesn't lie. And you know what? Allah doesn't shout. He guides. He weaves paths. He aligns souls like the stars. Not so that you understand everything, but so that you move forward with that inexplicable calm that has only one source. So you ask, but what if it was just a test? What if it was both? A test and an answer. A mirror of what you are ready to accept, but also a reminder of what you are still learning. The real question has never been, why did this person come into my life? But rather, what does Allah want to teach me through them? And sometimes, what He teaches you is that you are finally ready to receive what you thought you never deserved. 6. What your soul already knows. There are things your heart feels, without ever having learned to feel them. As if an ancient memory, older than your body, recognized something, or rather, someone. You think it's an encounter. You think it's chance, a coincidence, a beautiful surprise along the way. But what if what you feel isn't new? What if it's just a reminder? You haven't looked for anything, you haven't prepared yourself for this connection, but it's there, intense, calm, silent, inexplicable. And yet, it echoes something inside you that isn't new, something that eludes you, but that speaks to you. Do you want proof? Do you want to understand? But what you feel now doesn't need to be understood. It needs to be acknowledged. Your soul already knows. Not your mind, not your logic, not your fears. Your soul. And it knows. Because it saw what you don't remember. It saw this connection before it existed here below. In a world where hearts have no mouths, where souls cross paths, test each other, know each other. A world that has neither place nor time, but whose traces continue to vibrate in your heart, long after your arrival on this earth. Perhaps what you are experiencing right now, this connection that you don't understand, but that flows through you, is not the beginning of a story, but the continuation of a promise. Not a spoken promise, a written promise, in a book that only Allah reads. And you, here now, are simply acknowledging what your heart already knew. So stop believing you're making it up. It's not your imagination. It's not a projection. It's an echo. An echo from further than your past. An echo of what you were, of what you still are, before Allah. And when He wants your soul to remember, He doesn't always give you visible signs. He doesn't speak to you in a dream. He makes you feel. He brings a presence to you, a voice, a look, a peace you can't explain, but that you welcome as if it had always been there, because in reality, it has always been there, not in your life, in your writing, and where human words end, that's where what your soul has never forgotten begins. What if you stopped waiting for a clear voice and started listening to what your heart already feels? That person, that feeling, that inner peace. It may not be a coincidence. It may be the subtle form that the divine response takes. Maybe Allah has already spoken to you, but without using words. Now that you've felt it, what will you do with this confirmation? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever experienced this kind of divine encounter, disguised as a simple human experience? Subscribe if you want more reminders that speak to your soul, not just your head. And above all, don't take lightly those connections your heart can't explain, because sometimes what you've been looking for months is already there, right in front of you.